Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here. You know it's not every day that we get a new set of monumental rules that completely shake up the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But as you're almost certainly aware of by now, that's exactly what happened earlier this week. Konami revealed that they would be completely revamping the end of match procedure process and consolidating the hell out of it. Gone are the old days of 6 additional turns in time, and now in most cases you're just gonna have one phase to turn the tides of a duel.
Summon Skull! Attack!
Well, we've run out of time. But how close was that? If you had been able to complete that attack, I would have lost. But I didn't, did I?
This caused a lot of speculating in the community as to what cards might be significantly better because of the new rules and just cards really to look out for. It goes without saying that effect damage will be more important than ever, and cards with that ability will be prioritized. So in this video, I'll be breaking down my picks for cards that just got a serious boost in playability. Just for clarification, I'll be focusing on cards that work well in many phases, as you obviously have no idea what phase the game may be in when time is called. I'll also be taking into consideration how easy said cards are incorporated into common competitive strategies and decks. Without further ado, welcome to the top 10 cards that might be amazing after the new end of match procedure rule changes, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. Number 10, Soul Absorption. Let's kick off our list with a card that can basically be looked at as an entire deck. For the most part, you only see this card being used in banished Grenmaju decks. It's often used in conjunction with cards like Necroface and Pot of Desires to gain massive amount of life points, so you can effectively stall out turns until you actually get your Grenmaju and you're ready to one-shot your opponent. While having higher life points in time thanks to Soul Absorption was always possible before the rule changes, it just got a hell of a lot more reliable. In fact, now if you can predict that you will go in the time, you can actually banish a bunch of cards from Soul Absorption, and it practically becomes a better win condition than Grenmaju itself. What's even better is because these life point swings are so great in nature, the possibilities of overcoming even something as large as a 7,000 life point deficit using one of your main phases is completely possible and actually might become common. Number 9, Trickstars, the entire archetype. I know, Trickstars are already amazing. That's probably what you're thinking. And while I definitely agree, there was no way I was going to omit how much of a boost that they actually just got. Effect damage is going to be invaluable in time moving forward, and there is absolutely no meta deck that does it better than these little ladies. Lyco Risk, Candina, Holly Angel, hell, even their field spell has built-in burn damage. And because of cards like Trickstar Reincarnation, which is still completely unlimited in the TCG, the deck can do effect damage during any one of their opponent's phases, whether their opponent wants them to or not. Having a monster that can attack directly like Trickstar Lilybell is also a huge bonus. This means that in many situations where their opponent might have a pretty powerful board full of incredibly strong monsters, but only a minor life point lead, Lilybell can simply swoop down and poke through all of them for victory. FYI, I did list Trickstar so high because, as stated before, we all know that the deck is already pretty great. Number 8, the Wind Witches. I've always been a fan of this small engine and archetype as a whole, and boy did they just get quite the boost. Most know Wind Witches as a one-card gateway to Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is without a doubt their best play still. However, there's sometimes overlooked potential 1300 effect damage that you can do en route to summoning that Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon is now more important than ever. If you happen to get stuck in the main phase, Ice Spell's 500 burn damage becomes a value tool, and the fact that the archetype's themed Synchro monster does even more burn damage than her is actually just something that is so fantastic for them moving forward. The Wind Witch engine has already proven itself to be competitively viable in the past because of the explosive minimal effort Synchro plays, but now the burn damage is arguably just as valuable. Number 7, the Time Lords. The Time Lords are already collectively getting better, and the fact that we're getting some that can pump out some significant amounts of burn damage or even cut your opponent's life points in half make them all the more attractive. But when you couple that with their ability to survive any attack your opponent throws at you or come out of it with your life points completely unscathed, now their usefulness can be seen during either player's battle phase. Their tag back into the deck effect is also now completely irrelevant in these situations. Number 6, Mystic Walk. I have to admit, I absolutely love this card moving forward, and the amount of cheese that you can do with it under these new rules is going to be at an all-time high, believe it. Generally, trading card advantage for life points is a pretty terrible exchange and one that doesn't usually work out in the long run, but if you haven't noticed by now, most of these cards focus around short-term gains. In the past, you had to carefully manage your cards and life points over the span of 6 turns in time, but now it's going to be more like one phase, and Mystic Walk is a card that works in every single phase of the game. Better than that, it can actually allow you to have a life point swing equivalent to the old school Ring of Destruction plays where you would attack with a monster and then actually ring the monster. It does the same amount of damage had the monster actually attacked twice. Mystic Walk does that same thing, except it lets you gain the life points, but it has an identical impact from a win-loss standpoint. Actually better than Ring of Destruction, it can never be a situation where you can't activate Mystic Walk because the card would actually kill you. It also helps dodge some of those pesky targeting effects, and you get a lot of value out of your monsters that might die from field removal as well. Number 5, Firecracker. It's almost if this fairly new card was made entirely with the new rules in mind, as it's easily one of the best cards for time now. Firecracker is essentially a burn monster that activates from the hand, as a quick effect I might add, to burn your opponent for 1,000 damage. The downside, however, is generally so huge that any ideas of playing this card in the past were immediately dismissed. You have to skip your next draw phase, but as we all know from the new rules, my man Kaito would say it best, there is no next turn.
ランク8とは恐れ入ったぜ。だがペンデュラムモンスターは破壊されてもエクストラデッキに行き、次のターンでまたペンデュラム召喚できる。次などない。
So it's impossible to skip that next phase when the phase will actually never happen. That makes this guy all upside with essentially no negatives in time. The card also comes with a respectable 1700 attack, so he can do a little bit of battle damage if necessary. He's level 4, which means that you can go for rank 4 exceed plays like Gaga Cowboy, and you can also pendulum summon him rather easily. Number 4, Reckless Greed. Reckless Greed has actually seen a fair amount of competitive play before, most notably in Chainburn and from the Zexal era with Patrick Hoban and Mermill. It was used to accelerate your pace and basically get you to cards that you wouldn't see until future turns. If you drew the right setup in a deck like Mermill, as it was so explosive, you could just OTK your opponent and those draw phases that you were going to be missing out on wouldn't actually matter at all. The premise is identical now, but the uses are much more varied. For instance, if your opponent's battle phase is in time, you can use Reckless Greed to potentially get yourself a defensive card like Gores or Damage Juggler. If it's the main phase, you might be lucky enough to snag an Ash Blossom or an Effect Veiler. The effectiveness of hand traps in general makes Reckless Greed a great tool, but during your main phase, it might be able to lead you to some big combo pieces or even a Lucky Honest, Forbidden Quick Play Spell, or Jiraigedo during your battle phase, all with absolutely zero downside. Number 3, Chainburn, the entire deck. This should have been obvious. We now know why Konami put Chain Strike back at limited status, but let's be real here. The deck got to keep all of its copies of Card of Demise, making it still a terror. And in my personal opinion, there is no better deck in the entire game to absolutely abuse these new rules. The entire concept of Chainburn is built on doing effect damage, meaning the most powerful burn cards in the deck like Secret Blast, Chain Strike, and Secret Barrel, they can all be used during absolutely any phase during either player's turn. Chainburn can also effectively use the aforementioned Reckless Greed to great benefit, and even auto when in time if they use a card like One Day Apiece the turn before and they actually have higher life points already. Mortgaging your future for a nice right now was something that this deck did habitually, and now more than ever, Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually rewards this. Number 2, Poison of the Old Man. I never ever thought I'd see the day where this card was so high on one of my top 10 lists, unless I made like the top 10 old man on Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards or something crazy like that. But really, if you think about how important life points are going to be, this might be one of the most versatile cards in the entire game. Number 1, it can be used during either player's turn and during any phase. This means that it will always be 100% live no matter when time is actually called in the duel. Number 2, it's chainable, meaning that spell and trap removal is going to be a non-factor. And number 3, this is probably the most important factor to consider. This is one of the only cards in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That gives you the ability to burn your opponent or gain life points. This means you have so many freaking options. This is especially important in very tight games. Poison of the Old Man might be a rarely seen neg 1, but its versatility makes it actually kind of incredible right now. And finally, to our number 1, Gaga Cowboy. Don't lie, you remember the good old Zexal days of Cowboy for game. It was a legendary way to finish off duels that caused even legendary duelists to shed salty tears of anger. Well, I personally believe that Cowboy for game is going to be making a return to Yu-Gi-Oh! And in a pretty big way. While Gaga Cowboy was essentially power creeped right out of the extra deck by some newer, more impactful generic rank 4 Xyz like Castel, Tornado Dragon, and number 41 Bagusta, the boy will more than likely be returning to an extra deck near you very soon. For starters, rank 4 Xyz are still pretty much part of the meta. Decks like ABC, Pendulum Magician, and Trickstars can summon them, sometimes rather easily. And when it comes to doing simple effect damage, Cowboy is probably better at it than any card in the game when you're counting the extra deck, just because of how easy rank 4s are to summon in comparison to something like Gustav Max that you might have thought of. Also, unlike some Xyz and Link monsters that have effect damage built right into their effects like Volcasaurus and Topologic Trishbina, Gaga Cowboy doesn't require any specific actions or cards on the field. This means that your opponent doesn't really have to do anything, you simply detach a material and bang bang Cowboy for game. So that was my list, and let me know what you thought of it. Also, if there were any other cards that you guys can think of that are going to become legendary because of the new rules, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos. Subscribing makes life happy.